Sure. Well, yes, I'm Steve. I'm the owner of Rockcliffe Winery, and Rockcliffe is actually based on the south coast of Western Australia, in the Great Southern wine producing region. And Great Southern is a fantastic region. It's one of the only regions in the world where you can actually get cool climate and warmer climate grapes growing in the same region. So all of our grapes, whether okay, hopefully we'll believe this, but the Riesling, the Chardonnay are all the cooler climate bits, and then you get the Shiraz and the Cabernet, which are warmer climate parts from the region. So Rockcliffe is actually a James Halliday 5 Red Star rated winery, which means it's in the top 10% of wineries, according to James Halliday anyway, in Australia. And in order to get to that ranking, you have to have been producing very high quality wines for, I think, at least 5 years, according to the Halliday schedule. And so we managed to do that. I think we've done it 6 or 7 years now in a row. So when I actually bought a Vineyards, 17, 18 years ago, and slowly started to develop it and improve the quality of the grapes till we were making really good quality grapes. And at that time, the wine was made under contract by somebody else. But I thought that wasn't optimum winemaking for me. So I decided that maybe I should build a winery, which we did. So now we have the best and the largest winery actually in this part of the Great Southern. It's certainly not the largest in the whole of the Great Southern, but it's probably about the third largest or something like that. But my focus has always been to make high quality wine, because I used to work as a geologist in the oil industry, and I always recognized that my fellow co-workers were only interested in good quality wine, and they didn't particularly mind how much they paid for it, because it seemed to be a bit wealthy, which is good, of course. But anyway, they always liked wine. They always bought good quality wines, and my view was that's what we should focus on: good quality wines, and not worried particularly about the cheaper end wines that you can get from other places. So to remain relatively small, but make good quality wine. So I'm hoping that, again, at the end of the wine tasting, you will agree with me on that. I mean, I actually do every day I do the cellar door here at Rockcliffe, and a lot of people are very surprised that they actually like all of the wines. And the cellar door will taste about 18 different wines that we make. We make about 40 actually altogether. But the wines that we're going to look at tonight are almost the full range of our third reef wine tier. And the third reef tier is actually the second level of wines. The top level we decided not to do for this one, but you can always try it later if you want. So what would you like me to do now, Cheryl? Do you want me to talk about the Riesling?
Yeah, why don't we start with the Riesling, which should, for you guys, have an A on it. So I guess they go in order from A to E, if I remember my letters correctly.
Yes.
So
I think that's absolutely correct.
Yes, why don't you walk us through the first one?
But yes, I just apologize about putting A, B, C, D, E on the bottle. It's just that being a scientist, that's because I'm a geologist. When we did science testing, we would always put letters on the bottle. So I got used to putting letters, and it never occurred to me that probably you'd like the wine on it as well. But the letters hopefully link to the tasting notes that I also send. So we're going to try the third reef Riesling. I'm just going to obviously drink with you, even though I'm by myself here. So the third reef Riesling is, any Riesling from this region is particularly special. The Riesling grows exceptionally well here in the Great Southern. And the Great Southern is divided into 5 subregions, and each of the subregions produces different Riesling. So even though it's a warm climate part of the Great Southern, you still get good Rieslings from there. And the cool bit, which is where the winery is, again, very good Rieslings. So the Riesling is actually the white wine, I should say, of the Great Southern. And it's highly variable, generally very good quality. And it's variable in flavor because not only does each of the 5 subregions have different flavors, but actually different vineyards have completely different flavors. I mean, normally, Shiraz, you can always tell the Shiraz, but and the Cabernet, it's relatively easy. But the difference with the Riesling is really marked. So let's if you haven't already, just try a bit of it and see how you go. See what the color is. It should be that lovely sort of strawy colored yellow color. It should be fantastic.
Now, does everyone know where the Great Southern is? Because I did not.
Okay. Right. Okay. Let me explain to you where the Great Southern is. The Great Southern borders the southern coast of Western Australia. So there's a town called Albany, which is the biggest town in the region, which, it's 36,000 people, which for West Australia is a big town. I think it's the 3rd biggest town in West Australia, Perth being the biggest at just over 1 million. But nothing is particularly big in West Australia, except for the fact that the country is pretty big. It's about 10 times the size of France or something. And so it's on the south coast. I mean, I think most people would know where Margaret River is. Margaret River is on the western side. It faces onto the Indian Ocean, whereas the Great Southern faces onto the Southern Ocean, which is, of course, the cooler climate, really. The influence is the cooler climate. So in a way, it's a little bit similar to Tasmania or Melbourne, actually. I mean, Melbourne is even further south than we are, but Tasmania for sure is further south. And so you could say that the vineyards in the Denmark region is similar, perhaps more to the Yarra Valley than definitely to Tasmania. So south coast of Western Australia.
Awesome. Thank you. I think a couple of us looked it up on the map as well. So.
Oh, you have? Yeah. Nothing like a bit of Google at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So why don't we get the survey poll up here, and you guys can give us some feedback on the wine. And also, since we are such a small group, if you guys have questions for Steve or comments, feel free to just unmute yourselves and go for it. Or just take a moment to rate the wines.
What is your area famous for, apart from amazing wines? Or is it mainly amazing wines?
Well, Denmark is famous for Chardonnay, which we're going to look at next. Chardonnay, Pinot, Riesling, Sauvignon Blanc, Semillon. But as you go further to the north, you won't know the towns, but there's a town called Mount Barker, which has very good, actually all the grapes, whether they're cool climate or warm climate. It's only 50 kilometers to the north, but there's another 300 meters of elevation. And that region produces, Shiraz, Cabernet, Pinot, Chardonnay, and Riesling to a high standard. And then as you go to Franklin is another 50 kilometers to the north. And there you get the more standard Australian hot weather, cold nights, hot days. And that's fantastic for Shiraz and Cabernet. So this vineyard that I have here in Denmark has Chardonnay, Pinot, Sauvignon Blanc, and Semillon on it, which are ideal grapes for this region.
Steve, of the 40 wines that you make, are most of them reds or whites?
The bigger volume is for sure red. You know, I would say at the cellar door, we would sell 75% red. And that's just because Australians tend to drink red wine. And, you know, but if you go to China, for example, or Malaysia, where we also sell wines, you will find that I would say 95 or even greater the percentage of red wine that's drunk. China particularly is dominantly red wine, massively dominantly red wine, and Malaysia perhaps a little bit less so, but generally it's red for whatever reason. Japan, oddly enough, is more white wine. I think we only sell white wine, I think, to Japan. We don't sell any red.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So, I think I've always been very interested in culture and why people do things. And you would have thought, you know, maybe the Japanese would drink similar wines to the Chinese, but no, they don't at all. It's almost like it's the opposite, because the Japanese food, like sushi, sashimi, is absolutely fantastic with white wine. And whether we sell Riesling there, we sell the Sauvignon Blanc there, and they just go down really well in Japan with the Japanese cuisine. But China, really, you know, you would have thought that the Chinese food, which tends to be not as directly seafoody as Japanese food, but generally you would have thought Chinese food would be ideal to have with white wine. But actually, you know, culturally, they just don't want to drink white wine. They just want to drink red wine. And so that's it, really. And, you know, if you think about it, you know, if you go to Chengdu, Sichuan, where they have the spicy food, you know, how nice would that be with a glass of this Riesling? It would be fantastic. But no, they want to have Shiraz or Merlot or something like that. But it just depends what they like. It always depends on what you like, what you prefer to drink, I think. So, yeah.
Why don't we go on to the Chardonnay?
Yeah, we can definitely do Chardonnay. You know, I've got my new bottle of Chardonnay here. It's very good. So here we go. We've got our third Reef Chardonnay. Finish all that. So this wine will be just a little bit more yellowy color. Of course, it's also being Chardonnay. It would have been made in oak. So it's had 7 or 8 months, I think, in what would dominantly be French oak. Now, Chardonnay is arguably the best wine that would come out of the Denmark region. Some of the Chardonnays here are absolutely stunning, and there's several good wineries here, of which Rockcliffe is one of them, that regularly we get very high ratings from James Halliday. I can't remember what this Chardonnay was rated at, but it'd probably be about 94. But our top level Chardonnays would regularly get 96, 97 points with James Halliday. And the thing is, as we said before, that Chardonnay, it just grows exceptionally well here. And I think the soil type perhaps actually is ideal for producing high quality Chardonnay. Generally, the vineyards in the Denmark region are pretty small. And so generally, the Chardonnay will be relatively small production levels, but very, very good quality. And well, hopefully you will agree with me. I'm going to try a bit myself.
Delicious.
And you definitely get the oakiness and the aroma of the oak. Hopefully you've not got it too cold because it doesn't come over too well if it's too cold.
Steve, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Does James Halliday actually visit vineyards, or is that like a brand and he sends representatives? How does it work?
He is a brand, yes. He is, but he can visit.
It's like Michelin and they have their experts that go and taste wines?
No, they don't go. They don't go anywhere to taste the wines. The wine gets sent to them.
Okay.
So generally, the book I think is going to come out next week or the week after, the 2021 Wine Companion. What we have to do, I mean, it is a little bit strange. I'll explain to you if we've got a minute or 90 seconds. We have to send the wine to Sydney, where there is a tasting team in Sydney. When we're nominated that tasting team, and there are 5 tasting teams, all of them are in the eastern states. And so, with 2,500 wineries in Australia, and maybe they submit 10 wines, that's 25,000 wines. Well, it's not surprising there's 5 tasting teams. That's 5,000 wines each. It's still a hell of a lot of wine to get through. And it's not something that they would do overnight, for example. It takes a lot of time to do this and to document it. So generally, the James Halliday system is run by the book publisher, which is called Hardy Grant. So they arrange all of it, actually. So James would probably get to taste some of the wines that maybe the other tasting teams would recommend that he taste. But there's no way he's going to taste 25,000 wines. I think he's in his late 80s now. But having said that, he's a very busy man. He'll turn up at wine shows in China. He'll go to California and do wine shows. He's all over the place. Well, he was anyway before the COVID thing came in. I would imagine he's now in his house in the Yarra Valley. So he doesn't travel that much, but he has been to Rockcliffe, and he has been to Denmark several times. But he came to Rockcliffe, I think, about maybe 5 years ago. But he didn't. He came because I asked him very politely if he would come, and then I paid the required fees for him to come. But he just comes for the weekend. So, yes, it was a very long answer, and I apologise. But Halliday is a very interesting business. He's the figurehead of a big company.
We use it, so
yes, well, I mean, we all use it. I mean, I can do it when I used to do wine shows in China. The Chinese would be checking the Halliday scores before they've even turned up at the booth. And Halliday is actually translated into Mandarin now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you know what it is in Mandarin? Can you say it?
No, I can say ni hao. I'm not very good at it. I'm sure Kevin could do a little bit better than me.
Excellent. Well, why don't you walk us through, Pinot Noir. I love Pinot Noirs.
Yeah, Pinot. All right. Where is it now? That's the Chardonnay. We go with the Pinot. Righto. So Pinot is another wine that grows very well in the Denmark region. And I think the Great Southern Pinots are definitely getting a wider and better audience than they have done previously. I know, Tasmania is okay, it's fine. They make some really good Pinots there. And Yarra Valley as well, and Mornington, etc. But the Great Southern is now definitely getting a better press for its Pinots. And this one is the third Reef Pinot. It always does very well for us. People who taste it in the cellar door like it, and particularly if they're Pinot fans. They find it as a very good example of a Pinot, really, of a New World Pinot. So therefore, it's a pretty good seller for us, really. But the Pinot was always an interesting wine here because over a third of my vineyard here is Pinot. And when I bought the vineyard, I didn't taste any of the wines before buying it because I didn't really buy it. What was I going to do if the wine wasn't very good? Obviously, I had to improve it, and which I did. But when I tasted the Pinot, I just could not believe that the Pinot was that bad. And so I set about on a big effort, really, to try and improve the Pinot. And what I did is I went all over southern West Australia finding Pinots which I really liked. And the key for me was that the Pinots were highly variable. You get really good quality Pinots, and then in the vineyard next door, you just get really poor quality Pinots that almost undrinkable. So I bought a lot of the good quality Pinots, and then I went to discuss it with the winemakers. And they said, "Oh, it's not our fault. It's the grapes." So then, the next couple of years, I improved the grapes, and we started getting some really good Pinots. So then I thought, "Oh, right, we're getting there with the Pinot. Now I'm going to go to the South Island of New Zealand, to Central Otago, and find out what they do." And so I did that. Bought a whole load of what I regarded as really good quality Pinots, brought them back for the winemakers, and then the winemakers didn't have an option then. They had to improve their winemaking. So now we make Pinots, which is as good as this. I think is a really good Pinot that gets pretty good ratings from Holliday, who is a Pinot fan too, because he used to own Coldstream Hills in the Yarra Valley. So he's definitely a big Pinot fan. But he rates this, and I think in the last book we got a 94 points. I think not for this one, but for the upper level Pinot. But in the book they came up with some weird comment that they thought that this Pinot was one of the best Pinots that they had ever tasted from Australia. But then they gave it 94 points. So it was a bit of a strange thing. I don't know what they did, but anyway, it was nice of them to say it was a really good Pinot. So yes, I guess the point is that we do make really good Pinots now, which are highly regarded by people. And this is one of them. I'm going to try it now. Yeah, that's pretty good Pinot.
Steve, how long did it take you to get the bad Pinot to the good Pinot?
Well, I mean, nothing is instantaneous.
But was it like a year or like 5 years?
No. I started changing the Pinot over in 16 years ago, and I find that things just take time. Always in the vineyard. Vineyards are a great. I mean, I love the vineyards. I love growing things. It's a big passion for me, as well as making good quality wines. But I love watching things grow and trying to improve things. Any plants actually in my gardens as well. And so it did take several years to improve the vineyard. And then, almost instantaneously, you can improve the winemaking because first of all, you'll be checking the barrels and make good, really good quality barrels that you use. I know, and I didn't realize this, but with the winemaking, my winemaker last year, or the year before, said to me, "Steve, come and taste the wine in these barrels." So I said, oh, okay, yeah, thanks very much. I'll go and do that. So we tried 5 barrels with exactly the same wine. So it was the same grapes from the same blocks of grapes, of Pinot. So it was the same clone. Everything was the same. And then we tasted 4 barrels. Okay, a different oak, different origin of oak, always French oak, some new oak, some older oak. And the change was not that great. But she was leaving the 5th barrel, you see. And the 5th barrel, again, a French new oak barrel. And I tasted that and I said, my goodness, Alicia, this is incredibly good. It's much better than the other barrels. And so things like that, you know, the oak makes a big difference to it. And just not only because it's oak, it's actually the right oak. Of course, then I said to her, well, how much was this barrel? And the barrel was $1,800, whereas the other barrels were $1,200. But, you know, if you're going to make good quality wine, you need to address the oak correctly. And it's not an easy thing to do that. I mean, you know, I have a lot of time for winemakers because all these little things that they do all cumulatively produce, hopefully, really good wine, but you know, they can make the odd mistake. They don't have a job much longer if they do. But anyway, you know, it's not an easy job making really good quality wine. It just isn't.
Alrighty, well, why don't we launch the poll for that one? How's everyone feeling about the Pinot?
It's really good, really nice. Dave, I was wondering, so the grape has an impact, the barrel has an impact. As a geologist, do rocks have an impact?
Well, they do to a certain extent, you see. I mean, the rocks here are, well, the underlying rocks, i.e. the substratum here is granite or gneissic rocks. But effectively it's granite. And that underlies the whole of the Great Southern region. The granites are, I mean, they're exposed on the beaches. They make fabulous beaches, little coves, and you know, it's beautiful sandy beaches, and then beautiful bluffs of granite. It's absolutely fantastic. But these granites underlie the vineyards, not only my vineyard, but just about everybody else's. And these granites are 1.3 to 2.3 billion years old. So these are pretty old rocks, you know, they're a good vintage of rocks. But overlying the granite is clay, and that's probably about 15 meters, 10 meters, 15 meters, very variable. And then overlying that is generally either sand or gravel made out of the granites. It's very interesting that there doesn't really seem to be much of a soil profile here. And I'm amazed at that. I was talking to a vineyard in the Franklin region of the Great Southern, and I said, well, where do your best grapes come from? And he said, oh, the tops of the hills. Well, that surprised me, because the better soil, in inverted commas, better soil, is actually in the valleys. Surely, no. The better soil is actually at the top of the hills, where you've really only got a thin layer of gravel overlying clay. But that's where the grapes produce better quality. You know, maybe there's not so many grapes, and therefore the production is lower, but the quality is higher. I'm not sure, but it's very interesting that you can actually get quite a lot of variation. But the substratum is not too dissimilar, actually. And sometimes you get a soil, but I don't know. Well, you probably don't know much about this region, but this region used to be where Carry gum trees and tingle gum trees and stuff. You know, massive trees. They were felled in the early 1900s, and So when you look at the size of these trees, these are massive trees. And they're growing in the same soil. They're just growing in clay, effectively, or in the gravel. But most of the roots are in the clay. And it just amazes me that these massive trees could grow there. And now we're planting, vines in the same soil or same ground, I suppose. And they seem to be thriving too and making, really good wine. It's extraordinary. I mean, if I was a plant, the last thing I'd want to be planted in is this stuff. When we grow vegetables and stuff, we have good compost and stuff.
Yeah,
There's nothing like that here.
Yeah, it seems like adversity builds better grapes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, the vines are challenged a bit. They seem to do better, actually.
Awesome. Thank you. Steve, why don't you take us through the next wine? It's the Shiraz,
Yep.
I believe.
Yeah, Shiraz. Oh, here we are. Wait a minute. Let me get myself a... Oh. So here's the Shiraz. I don't know whether you can see that very clearly, but it is the Shiraz. And this Shiraz will come from Mount Barker or from Franklin, or both, actually. Because in Denmark being right on the coast of southern Australia, as you come further south from the Perth region, the grapes then can be harvested in January. But as you come further south, it's another 400 kilometers further south of Perth, that the ripening gets later and later and later. And so when you get to Denmark, if you were growing Shiraz here or Cabernet, you would be trying to ripen it in April. Well, April is autumn. And at that time, the leaves are already dropping off the vines and it's raining. So that's why it's really difficult to grow the heavier reds. We can grow the vines, they grow really well, but you can't get the grapes ripe enough every year. So maybe 1 in 4 you'll probably get away with it. I don't know, but and so you really need to go to up further north to Mount Barker or Franklin, where you can get fantastic reds. I mean, I know that, again, the same winery that I was telling you about with the grapes being the best quality on the tops of the hills. I was talking to him, the owner of that too, and I said, well, who else do you sell grapes to? And he said, oh, we sell it to Penfolds. And I said, well, how can you sell it to Penfolds in South Australia? And he said, no, they still put our grapes in their wine. So that was an interesting comment. I hadn't realized that West Australian grapes actually go to South Australia and are made into what is allegedly a South Australian wine. But anyway, it just shows that the quality in the Great Southern is very high. For people for other wineries to go to that length to ship all the grapes all the way over to South Australia. Of course, they can't do it now, of course. Oh, they probably could. We'll have to see what happens. But this year, this vintage, because of all the fires in the eastern states, a lot of the wineries in the eastern states were buying West Australian grapes and sending them over to the eastern states because they didn't have any grapes themselves. So put all the prices up, of course, but okay, that's what happens. Unfortunately, they can't do. If you have the fire, it's just a disaster, and sometimes you think, what happens if we had a fire? So, you can be very sympathetic to anybody who gets afflicted with those terrible fires that occurred earlier this year. Anyway, we've gone off the Shiraz thing. So the Shiraz it was interesting, actually, with this wine. I was asked a couple of months ago by the Liquor Store Association of West Australia, who sent me an email saying, would I like to put one wine into a wine tasting? And it was going to go to several wine critics in the eastern states, which they were going to organize. I didn't have to pay for it. for this. So I got the email and immediately phoned them up and said, yeah, sure, we could do this, but what's the goal here? And they said, oh, just send 18 bottles to us and we'll distribute it to the various people, and then we'll do another Zoom wine tasting like this, and with the various wine buyers in the eastern states. So I said, okay, well, the Shiraz is very popular. I'll send this third Reef Shiraz to you, and you can see what happens. So that day I also packed it up, sent off 18 bottles to them. And then last week, I think it was, we did a wine tasting with it. And then you find out, oh, look, there's a member of parliament doing the wine tasting, and there's the buyers from all these massive liquor store chains. And the guy, one of the guys said to me that he thought that this third Reef Shiraz was one of the best wines he'd tasted. Certainly the best wine he'd tasted of the other wineries that were part of this Liquor Stores Association. And I said, oh, that's really nice, and how many liquor stores do you own? And he said, oh, 135. Oh my goodness, this is an interesting thing. So he's really praising this wine. So he obviously knows a lot about buying wine. So it's not like he's owns one liquor store or something, but he actually owns a whole chain of them. And so that gave me a lot of positive thoughts again about this wine. I think it's a pretty good wine. Hopefully. Anyway, I'm going to have a bit now. And it's what people call a cool climate Shiraz. Well, in my view, Shiraz doesn't grow in a cool climate. It's just, what I think they mean is, by when they call it cool climate Shiraz, is that it's not a Barossa Shiraz. So it's not that very strong, highly flavored, peppery Shiraz that you get from the Barossa and other areas perhaps of South Australia. But it's still a really good Shiraz, and it has, our Shiraz is, I think James Holliday did a wine tasting. Sorry, he did a ranking of what he regarded as the 20, is it the 20 best? I think it was the 20 best Shirazes over $30 a bottle sorry, not Shirazes, red wines over $20, over $30 a bottle in Australia. And the Great Southern, out of that, I think it was 10. The Great Southern had 4 out of the top 10 in his rankings. And Rockcliffe was one of them, actually. And so that was another great thing. It just shows that, all the effort that we put into making really high quality wine is actually being responded to by the wine critics. Both that guy with his 135 liquor stores and Halliday. So, I take a lot of positive thoughts from that, because it's Shiraz. Shiraz is very much the wine of Australia. I mean, the whole world, wine drinking world anyway, knows that Australia is famous for Shiraz, but generally they'll think it's the Barossa style of Shiraz. But a lot of the other areas produce really good Shirazes too, including the Great Southern and Franklin and Mount Barker, where we get these grapes from. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. We'll get the poll up on this one as well. Definitely can say I'm enjoying it. Anyone else have any thoughts?
We go with the poll.
Yep, we got it up. So
Okay.
throw your votes in there. Steve, which country do you ship the most wine to?
Well, it used to be China, but actually China has not taken any wine now since December.
What, because of COVID?
Pardon?
Because of COVID?
Yes, largely because I mean, because they went into massive lockdown too, and so people were not allowed out. They couldn't go and buy it. I guess they could buy on the internet, but the Chinese buy so much on the internet anyway, regardless. They can get a takeaway meal at 2:00 in the morning and it'll get delivered. That's they just do it all the time in China. It's just an internet revolution country. So yes, I've been a little bit surprised that they haven't come back to us with any orders since then. And as I say, we have an office and a sales team in Shanghai, but that haven't been particularly successful. And I don't quite know what's going on because, of course, I can't go, so I don't know what's happening. But otherwise, we will sell. Like China will buy like a container of wine at a time, and that's 15 pallets. So effectively, they are by far the biggest buyer of our wine. Whereas, sorry?
How many bottles are in a pallet?
Well, 64 cases times 12. So, that's 600, 700 or so. 720, 730. Wow. Yeah. So it's quite a lot. And they're generally they like all like levels of wine, the top quality wine as well as the cheaper wines. But they can easily buy 4 or 5 pallets of the top quality wine, and they always pay top quality prices for it actually, which is good. The Chinese generally are I like China. I think it's a fantastic country. I'm amazed when I go there and you see the things that happen there. I'm not saying that's in a bad way, but of course anything that happens which might be a bit negative, you never see. Not when you go there anyway. You just see all the positive things that they've done, and they have completely changed the country in 10 years. It's fantastic. And when you first, for example, the population of Shanghai is the same as the population of Australia. It's about, I think Shanghai is a bit bigger actually than Australia. I think Australia is about 24.5 million, whereas the population of Shanghai, Greater Shanghai, is about 27 million. And so how many other cities are there? There's just so many people, and a lot of these people now are drinking wine, and they're, in particular, they're drinking Australian wine, or at least they were. I'm not quite sure what they're up to at the moment. But yes, so going back to your original question, Malaysia has taken wine recently. Japan has definitely slowed down. We haven't had an order from them since Christmas time. US, we don't forget it. That's not going to happen in much of a hurry, is it? Canada, no, nothing there either. So our international wine sales have definitely slowed down, and I need to find out when that's going to come back. I mean, I guess it's much more like, when are people going to come out of lockdown? Because that's the issue, really.
Steve, can you still send wines to Victoria?
Yes, the wines go to Victoria, yeah.
Excellent. Well, that's good news.
Yeah. No, actually, they did buy recently. Our distributor in in Melbourne did buy wine.
Good.
And he's a fantastic guy. And a really nice guy. He's very relatively small distributor, I'm pretty sure. I don't know what other wines he distributes, but he's a good guy.
Yep.
And there's no issues with him whatsoever. But we don't sell that much in Melbourne.
Really?
Well, no, not really. It's difficult to sell West Australian wines in Melbourne, actually, and in the eastern states. It's not easy.
Is that because of the local demand, or?
Well, there's a lot of good wine that's produced, particularly near Melbourne, isn't there? When you think of all those fantastic Geelong Tasmania, Yarra Valley. There's just loads of really good wine produced in that region. And there's a little bit of a tendency to buy the locally produced wines, I think. You know, in New South Wales, I think, you know, you have the Hunter Valley, you have Orange, you have some really good wines there. So we'd have to be a little bit different, I think. But as I say, you know, we just focus on making high quality wine, and we try to make it as good as anybody else's, if not better. And I think there's always a market for that wine. It doesn't matter whether it's in Melbourne, Sydney, or Shanghai. Actually, it's people generally like good quality wine, and they're willing to certainly drink it and hopefully pay for it at the same time.
Excellent. Thank you.
Fantastic. Why don't we go on to our last one, the Cab Sav?
Yeah, perfect. Oh, right behind me now. Here we go. It's a nice dark, rich color. I tend to always taste this one after the Shiraz, because in my view, this is a heavier wine than the Shiraz. Now, that's not generally normal. I think most people would drink the Shiraz after the Cabernet, because I think that's really because everybody assumes that the Shiraz is going to be like a Barossa Shiraz, but it's not. It's more subtly flavored than those wines. So this is a heavier wine, and it definitely appeals to people who like the heavy wines. But this is, let me just taste a bit. So you'll see it's a much darker color. It's got a nice aroma to it. It's fantastic, actually. This is an interesting wine because the Cellar Door, around about Christmas time, the best-selling red was that Third Reef Shiraz, which we've already tasted. And the Third Reef Cabernet didn't sell that much. But all of a sudden, the Third Reef Cabernet started outstripping sales of Third Reef Shiraz. We still sold a lot of Third Reef Shiraz, and just as much actually as before. But now we suddenly started selling lots of, Third Reef Cabernet, and people would come in and just, taste the wines and then just buy a case of Third Reef Cabernet, 12 bottles, which is not a common occurrence for any of the wines. People don't do that as a rule. They might buy 12 bottles, but mixed case, but not go and buy 12 bottles of the same wine and a few other bottles of the other. So, like total of 2 cases, but dominantly the Cabernet. And it was an interesting one. I got invited about 4 weeks ago. I got invited to a friend of mine to go for dinner with her family, and I got invited with it. Like, I got the message 15 minutes before I was supposed to be there, so I had to quickly think. Oh, okay, I'll take a bottle of wine. What shall I take? Oh, I'll take the Third Reef Cabernet. So I grab a bottle of Third Reef Cabernet, dash down to their house, and what were they drinking? Third Reef Cabernet. I thought this is a bit strange. So we drank their Third Reef Cabernet, my Third Reef Cabernet, and then we had a bottle of Third Reef Shiraz. So that was pretty good, I thought. So that was a Saturday evening, and then on the Sunday morning, before I'd even opened the cellar door, this guy comes in his 4-wheel drive, runs up the path to the cellar door and says, I'm sorry, I'm a bit early, but I've got to go back to Perth. Last night I was drinking a bottle of Third Reef Cabernet, and I need to take some to Perth. So I said, yeah, sure. How strange is this? Third Reef Cabernet is just going mad. But that was okay, except the next customer who came in said, which was just after 11, just after that guy had gone. So now at least they were here on time, within the time. And he says to me, oh, last night I was in the local restaurant and at the pub, and we had a bottle of your Third Reef Cabernet, and now I have to come here and buy some more. So I couldn't believe it. You know, it's just Third Reef Cabernet. It's just proven to be such a good wine now for us. That well, hopefully you guys will enjoy it too. I know I enjoy it. I mean, I now if I go out for dinner with people, I'll take the Third Reef Cabernet and see what reaction it gets.
I'm not usually a Cab Sav kind of girl, but this one is
It's
really
good, isn't it?
It's delicious. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone else have any thoughts on the Cab Sav?
I was just saying, it's very grown up, very elegant. Like you'd have it with, I don't know, like a fancy dinner party. It's really lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I don't know how many fancy dinner parties are happening these days, so I might just have to drink it alone.
Yes. It depends where you are, I guess, doesn't it? In Melbourne, probably would be a little bit more difficult to have a fancy dinner party. But Sydney would be a bit better, wouldn't it?
What's the story behind Third Reef?
Where did the name come from? You mean?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Okay. So originally the vineyard and the original wine business was not called Rockcliffe. We changed the name to Rockcliffe after putting a lot of thought into what would be an appropriate name for a winery that produces high quality wine. And so this was now 8 years ago. And so we were looking to see what local names that we could actually use. And we couldn't find anything that was appropriate. And so we decided to look around a little bit more carefully, find some maps. And we found a map that had a road on it called Rockcliffe Circle. And immediately we realized that was, Rockcliffe was by far the best name. So Rockcliffe Circle is a road, which is a circular road, that runs along the top of some cliffs in Denmark. And these cliffs are granitic cliffs. So immediately you've got a link between the beautiful scenery on the beaches, because the cliffs are on what's called Ocean Beach, so there's a link there between effectively the vineyard and the cliffs, a link between the beautiful landscapes in this region, and thirdly, I'm a geologist, and so there was a link to me as a rock specialist. So Rockcliffe, then that's how we realized the name. So then you had to think, well, okay, now we've got the first tier wines, which is called single site, which seemed, very appropriate. And then the second level of wines are called Third Reef. But the Third Reef, that name came from a surf break, which is at the bottom of those cliffs. And it seemed again that this was a good thing because it linked the cliffs, the Rockcliffe name, it linked it to the sea, and it also linked it to my geological background. So that's where the Third Reef is. And if you come to Denmark, you can come and see the cliffs, and you can go and see where Third Reef surf break is. So it had what we thought was pretty reasonable names, actually, in the end. And people often ask me why did you call it Third Reef? They don't generally ask why we call it Rockcliffe, but actually, if you Google Rockcliffe, you will find that generally it's always a highly high quality, highly respected thing. Like there's an area of Toronto, for example, which is called Rockcliffe, which is like one of the top areas of Toronto in Canada. It's called Rockcliffe. There are areas in Scotland that's called Rockcliffe. Pardon?
Yay, Canada!
Yeah, Canada, exactly. Yeah, well, we sell wine to Canada, to the LCBO actually, so it's available in Toronto.
High school Cheryl would be very excited about this.
Right, excellent. And so it's you get restaurants which are like Rockpool, for example. I think there's a Rockpool in Sydney. I'm not sure, but there's definitely a Rockpool here. And it generally if you include rock in it, then it's generally perceived to be high quality. But I'm not going to even tell you what the name was before because it just didn't mean high quality. So.
There is a Rockcliffe in Toronto. There's a neighborhood called Rockcliffe in Toronto. Look at that.
Yeah, there is for sure.
Learn something new about my home country.
Yeah. Rockcliffe is, you can Google it and find it. And I've Googled it, and of course I follow anybody on Instagram and Facebook that's anything to do with Rockcliffe. So that's how I can easily find out about Rockcliffe.
Awesome.
We had to check it before we decided to go ahead with it because we needed to have a good name, which gave people a story, which it does because of the you can actually go and see the cliffs, and it's linked to Denmark, but it's also linked to me as a geologist and the vineyard as the rocks that underlie the vineyard. So that was pretty reasonable actually, and so we tried to make it things which had a little bit of a nautical theme too, maritime theme, because of the fact that the Australians tend to like things which are associated with the sea, because of course 90% of the population lives within 20 kilometers of the sea or something. So and there's Australians are very good at swimming. They go surfing and they do all this marine type sports, fishing, etc. is massive. So we thought that we'd kind of make that link. Plus, of course, Denmark is on the sea too. So that's reason. The funny thing about that is, of course, when you start selling wine in China, which we did after we'd done all the naming, the Chinese say, "Well, why did you call it that?" And they say, "Oh, well, we've never seen the sea." So, yes, it's a good point. For them, the ocean doesn't really mean much to them because that's not part of their life, really. Not like it is in Australia. So though we started off by being a dominantly Australian selling company, we've now become, an international wine selling company, wine producing and selling company. So the business got, much bigger really as perhaps as a result of that brand change. It was very important to us. Brand is always very important.
Of course. Well, I like the name. Does anyone else have any final questions for Steve that you'd like to raise while we have him here? No, we're shaking your heads. What did everyone think of the wines tonight?
They were delicious, Steve. And next time that my wife and I are over WA, we'll definitely head down. We've been to Margaret River before, but we haven't gone all the way down to Denmark. So
yeah, you should definitely come to. Okay, everybody goes to Margaret River. I understand that, but Margaret River is about 10th the size of the Great Southern, and the quality of the wines are higher actually from the Great Southern because of that very important fact that you can get every single grape type made into high quality wines here. You can't get that in Margaret River. You get really good Cabernet in Margaret River and some good Chardonnays, but you can't get Pinot from Margaret River, for example. I don't think the whites are that good either. It's a different climate, and it just doesn't have it like it does here. Yeah, it's well worth coming to the Great Southern if you can do that. There's about how many wineries here? I would say there's about 50 or 60 wineries in the Great Southern, and there's such a good range different styles. Of course, if you come to the Great Southern, you'll come to Rockcliffe. I know that, but there's no point just coming to Rockcliffe. You've got to go and see other wineries too. And I can tell you which ones are really good ones that you should go to. So you don't go to all 60, but there's about 10 that you should definitely go and visit when you come over, and that makes it a really good trip actually to do that.
It sounds like a good weekend or week.
Yeah, it's about. I would come for a week because there's a lot of other things to do when you're here. And there's, the beaches are fantastic, the scenery is fantastic, so you could just coming here, and also the other thing is that it's not as busy as other regions like Margaret River, and I'm sure Yarra Valley, because of and Tasmania, but here is relatively quiet. If you go to a cellar door, you can just chat. And like me, I do the cellar door every day, so you can come and chat to me, which doesn't happen. You can't. Then generally, you can't go and meet the owner at the cellar door because the owner isn't doing the job. But I always do it, and I really like doing it because you just make fantastic people. It's amazing people. Yesterday, for example, I had a Cathay Pacific 747 pilot. Retired. These are really interesting people that you meet, and you have some great discussions, and not necessarily about wine, but about a whole range of subjects. And, people can, it officially closes at 5. Well, today the last customer left at 5:40, but that was only because I said, "Look, guys, I've got to go because I've got to do I want to do the Zoom thing with Wyflo with you guys."
Thank you.
But I didn't want to miss that, and you would get very annoyed if I missed it. So I can fully understand that. But sometimes people are still here at 7. It's astonishing. But you wouldn't get that in most wineries.
That is very true.
Yeah, because they just, generally it's run by the staff, and the staff have to leave at 5, so they just shut it down. But we just keep going, we keep chatting, and if people don't buy, it's okay. It doesn't matter because, at the end of the day, if they go to a liquor store and they see Rockcliffe, they'll buy the wine because they enjoyed the experience of going. It's like this, it's the same thing. It's part of the experience. Yeah.
Well, if I had the choice, I would definitely never leave. So I would just keep drinking.
Well, you're welcome to come.
I absolutely will. As soon as restrictions allow us to come over without having to do the 14-day 14-day quarantine, I'm there 100%. So I'm just going to share my screen really quickly, guys, so you can just see how to I need to be enabled, please. Host, please enable me. I want to show you guys exactly how to get these wines so you can order the full bottles from what you tasted here tonight. So let me try this again. Here we go. All right. Yeah, what did I just do?
Screen sharing.
I feel like I did it wrong.
Oh, it's me back again.
Hold on, team. Hold on. I'm like 3 wines in, all right? Okay, so guys, you would have gotten this email that has the Zoom link. Just under here, hidden away, is a little button that says click here. And that is going to take you to this page that has the 5 varieties we tasted here tonight, not in the same order, but we've got the Riesling, Chardonnay, Shiraz, or Pinot Noir, Shiraz, and Cab. So I think my favorite tonight was the Cab Sav. So I'm going to put 6 of those. And I think my other favorite was the Riesling. So I'm going to put 6 of those and add that to my cart. Now, you guys will have gotten a coupon code here. I don't get one because obviously I'm not as loved as you guys are, but your coupon code should be right there. And you can just go ahead and enter that at checkout. So once you've ordered that, you will have that added to your checkout. And you can enter the coupon code on this page. Super easy. I think that's just right here, is it not? I believe so. If you have any issues, guys, just get in touch with us. So grab the ones that you like. If you have any questions, please let us know. Also, if you have any feedback, we will send a survey